We're sitting with a de Havilland 9.
It's the only one in the world. It's quite unique. I'm absolutely honoured to fly it. In fact, there are only 2 people alive in the world today that have flown it.
An amazing aircraft, the de Havilland 9A and the de Havilland 9 series were introduced initially as a strategic bomber.
Interesting aeroplane. Came from India. First World War aeroplane, 1918. Reputedly the world's first strategic bomber. This particular airplane was built by a company called Airco, which was, I think, was a subsidiary of de Havilland's.
The British, having suffered on the receiving end of the first strategic air campaign waged during any war by the Germans using Zeppelins and later Gotha bombers upon targets in the UK. That created an anger and a desire by the British to retaliate.
Aviation always advances in a wartime situation. They're always developing. And they developed this sort of thing in the SE-5 fighter. You know, they were ultimate aeroplanes of the time.
The keenness and the courage with which they established our air supremacy in 1918 was the same as that which is establishing our supremacy now.
To retaliate, the RAF created the Independent Air Force. And the purpose of the Independent Air Force was strategic bombing of Germany. And one of the aircraft to equip the Independent Air Force was the de Havilland 9. When you look at it through today's eyes, it's very hard to believe that this machine of wire and fabric, biplane, open cockpit, was a strategic bomber.
It's quite a complex aeroplane, but these guys were well trained. You know, First World War mechanics and Second World War mechanics were extremely highly trained. So it would have just been a case of whatever needed doing on the aeroplane. After a mission or operational sortie, you know, it would probably be battle damage that was required more than maintenance.
And it is a credit to the courage of the airmen that flew it that you might be 6 hours in an open cockpit in one of these aircraft with only one engine to rely upon.
The engine, now that's the thing that worries me slightly on the aeroplane, is that the engine is 100 years old, well, it's 106 years old. So when you're flying the aeroplane, you're always looking for a field, because if it stops, you need somewhere to go. And at the end of the day, it's not a question of if it's going to stop, it's when it's going to stop.
And nothing by way of navigational aids other than eyesight, maps, dead reckoning.
I imagine they would have been the same as the Second World War pilots, you know, 18 through to about 25, but probably wouldn't survive above 19. I mean, there's that classic line, you know, they were known as the 20 minutes. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But I mean, you know, and of course, no parachute. So if it all went wrong, you know, it's bizarre. It was the cowardly way out, apparently, to use a parachute. A gentleman wouldn't use a parachute. He burnt to death, but he wouldn't use a parachute. What's it like to fly? Well, when it was handed over to me, I was told just fly it like a tiger moth. And fortunately, I've got a lot of experience on tiger moth, so it wasn't a difficult aeroplane. But it's very heavy. It's very heavy in pitch, so when you fly it, you kind of got 2 hands on the stick rather than one. It's quite an effort. It's, again, like the Hurricane, it's very noisy. You're sat on a wicker chair, so it's like sitting in a conservatory with palms around it. If it had a palm leaf in there, it would be quite appropriate. It's just, it's that aviation, what it was like at the time. It's very It's very responsive, to be fair. I personally wouldn't want to do aerobatics with it, although it was clear to do some form of aerobatics. But the original paperwork we've got for the aeroplane in manuals states it as a fighter, which I was quite surprised about when I saw it. So it must have had, some capabilities to be able to throw the aeroplane around. Personally, it's quite an old lady, so I like to kind of treat her gently. But she's nice to fly. Again, not difficult. It's got fairly good crosswind limits. It's a grass airfield. You can see it's got a skid on the back rather than a tail wheel, so you always need to land it on grass, and if possible into wind. I wouldn't say it's viceless, but I haven't hit any snags with it as yet. I've kind of played around with it a bit. There's been lots of films about, Aces High and Blue Max and stuff like that, using replica aeroplanes, which is fine. But this is a real one, and I think, the bomber crews of World War I, probably, I've never seen anything really in film or obviously not interviews now because they're long gone. But, the work they did was incredible. I mean, it's an open cockpit aeroplane, it's got a long endurance. You're not throwing bombs over the side. It didn't have the bombs internally in the aeroplane. So you're not actually physically throwing them over the side of the aeroplane. But even so, it's cold, it's an environment that's very, very unfriendly. And as in World War II, it's great to fly, but you're getting shot at. They're trying to kill it.